All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Today is October 21st, 2021. This is the meeting of the Kingston Local Development Corporation. This is our October meeting. We are recording this meeting, and this meeting will be posted on our City of Kingston YouTube channel, as well as our City of Kingston website at kingston-ny.gov/Kingston Live. We are joined today currently by a couple of our board members. So I'm just going to go ahead and read through the list. If I miss anyone, please let me know. I see at this point board members Paul Kashera, Hayes Clement, Eleni Louisa, B.A. Feeney, Andy Turco-Levin, Glenn Fitzgerald. We're also joined by our executive director, Andy Bruck, and we also have Brian Donahue, one of our board members as well, who currently is listed as Morgan on the screen. And we're also joined by our council, Bob Ryan. Good morning, Bob. And so I think that that's everyone that I see at this point. Thank you all for hopping on with us. And at this point, I'm going to officially call this meeting to order at 8:04 a.m. And so the first thing that we actually have on our budget or on our plan today is just an update from our council. And so Bob, I don't know if there's anything that we need to discuss in executive session. So if there's just a public update that you'd like to give us about kind of where we are with our status, that would be fine.
Yes, sure. And yes, we can. It's a quick update just to let you know where we are, and we can do this right now. As you know, at our August meeting, the board approved the execution of the land disposition agreement. And we also issued what's called a 90-day notice pursuant to the Public Authorities Accountability Act. And that was submitted on August 3rd. The 90 days expires November 3rd. So therefore, on or after November 3rd, we would be permitted to receive the property from the city and also dispose of the property to the developer. So currently, I'm in the process of finalizing the transfer documents. And again, there'd be two sets of transfer documents, the deed and forms that are necessary to transfer the property from the city to the KLDC, and then the transfer documents, deed and RP and TP forms that would be required to transfer the property from the KLDC to the developer. Also, just as an update, the KLDC was not made a party to a motion that was filed in response to some previous litigation against the city with respect to the property. And there, if you recall, there was as part of a previous litigation, some plaintiffs brought an action claiming that part of the property was a park, a public park. The Supreme Court ruled that it was not a park, and they appealed that. And while that appeal is pending, they recently filed motion for a preliminary injunction to prevent the city from transferring the property to the KLC. The city filed all their opposition papers, as well as the developers filed the opposition papers with the court, and a decision is pending on that preliminary injunction by the judge. So we do need to see the result of that motion prior to transferring the property from the city to the KLDC. And it is hopeful that that decision would occur before the beginning of November, so before the November 3rd date. And other than that, that's where we stand with the.
Is there a quick and easy answer to this question?
Great. Thank you, Bob, for that update. Does anyone have any questions for Bob at this point? If not, Bob, thank you for the update and thanks for your time today. I'm sure you'll keep us apprised as to what happens over the next couple of weeks.
I will. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
At this point, Mandy, I think I'll ask you whether Council Rutter had any updates for us that he passed along to share with you, with us.
So we'll try it.
No, actually, he was going to come.
That's great. Thanks so much. I apologize.
He was going to appear today. He has a request from one of the borrowers, but because the borrower's attorney has not gotten back to him with the information he needed in order to present to you guys, he asked that he hold off until December, should they decide that they're going to give him the information that he needs. Other than that, he didn't have anything else to report.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mandy, for that update. And we'll look forward then to potentially talking to him in December about that. I think up next, we'll have our treasurer's report. Thank you, BA, for sending that out to everybody. Much appreciated.
Morning. I apologize for the late hour in sending that out, but wanted to try and get most of the notes out to you. When we go through the next section, which is the ABO, the budget and the financial plan, there was a change that just happened that just went out, but I'll be able to speak to that. But if I could, just a brief update anyway.
I didn't get it.
I know, Andy, I apologize. Yours bounced back.
Where are you sending it? AOL or Gmail or Coldwell Banker?
It was a Gmail account, but I
Okay.
think I put the dot in the wrong spot. It bounced
There's
back.
no dot. It's Andy T. Levin at Gmail.
I bounced back. I had a dot in it. It bounced back as undeliverable. So I apologize on that.
Would somebody be able to send me that link so I can view it? Because I can't see it and I can't vote on something I can't see.
I just sent it to you, Andy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, actually what I had sent out last night, Andy, was just my notes that I'm going to go through this morning. Would have been, I believe, what Mandy had sent out early in the week, which was the roster of the borrowers.
Yeah, that I have.
Okay, and that's really what I was going to be touching base on. The only thing I think I included was just my notes, which had bank balances on it, which again, I can go through this morning. Currently, as I said, we have 16 loans outstanding, 14 of which are paying as agreed. We have 2 that we do have some challenges with, one of which is the ongoing item for DFC. And that was something that Mandy had just mentioned George has been addressing. And it sounds like either November or December, we would have some additional update on that. But that remains in litigation. There is another one that is currently past due, or I should say that is past due as a showing as of today, and that's the Trolley Museum of New York. That has been a couple of months now. That is also something that George is working on. Excuse me. Communications with them. Unfortunately, I do not have an update where that is. But as I said, that had been turned over, asking George to reach out to them. My understanding is they are in operation. I don't know if it is their normal schedule or an abbreviated schedule, but it does appear that they are up and running at some level. So try and get an answer on why we've not received payments from them. But as mentioned, and you can see in that roster of borrowers, everybody else is either current or we do have 3 that are listed as paid in full. Let me just shift gears a little bit. From the income and expense figures for the Kingston Local Development Corp, revenues year to date, that currently shows at 167,759. Expenses at this point showing at 116.9. So right now, as of the end of September, we do show a net income on the books of over $50,000, 50,834 to be exact. So again, we are on target to have a pretty solid year, which is comparable to where we were about this time last year. Bank balances that, Andy, unfortunately, you did not receive. We are showing currently a total in 6 different bank accounts, $3.1 million in various bank accounts. They are set aside for particular purposes in some cases. And I will speak to that in a moment. You will notice there is one that does show a sizable decrease, and that is the 108 account. And that was money that we've spoke of before that had been set aside for the HUD borrowings. That ultimately has been reduced by a little over $500,000 because that HUD borrowing has now been paid off and paid in full. And that was a conversation between HUD, Kingston Local Development Office, and the City of Kingston that it was in the best interest of all parties to take that off the books and to pay that out. So the balance is, for example, June 30, approximately 3.5 million. We are at approximately 3.1 now as of the end of September. The bulk of those balances are or continue to receive interest, although interest in this market is not very strong. Generally about twice a year. In the past 3 years, I've gone out to search and see what other options there are. And again, in this particular market, the options are very, very limited. So again, that is something in the fall that can be done. And again, late spring, it's usually done also. But balances again remain strong. We do have sufficient cash for operations. We do have sufficient cash for our obligations for certain. On a positive note, as I just mentioned, the HUD note was paid off. That was approximately $500,000. Those were for the 108 loans that we had taken out several years ago. And the New York State Department of Transportation note, the DOT loan, which supported the construction of the road up into the business park, that was also paid off in the first half of the year. So in 2022, we will not have those annual principal payments. The HUD payment is approximately $100,000 plus interest, and that DOT payment has been approximately $27,000 per year. So those are funds that will remain in-house, for lack of a better. For the business park itself, and that should have been included in the materials that had been sent out. We do reflect the rental income at $90,000. There has been a name change. We referred to it most recently as Arconic. The company now is called Howmet. There is no change in the operations of the tenant there, and the contract remains in force, the annual lease. We do show expenses of insurance, again, nothing different, marketing, legal and accounting. We do have the utilities for the business park that we do continue to pay, and the expense up until September 30th did include the $27,500 payment for the DOT loan. Total expenses, $35,584, showing a net income for the business park at $54,004. So again, those figures remain consistent with years past. Does anybody have any particular questions that I can answer at this point in time?
All
Hearing
right.
none, if I could ask then for a motion just to accept the report.
Hayes, thank you. And then Paul seconded. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right. Thank you, BA, for that. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Up next is new business related to our actual budget.
Back on top again. There was actually just a change that was sent out probably about 5 or 10 minutes of 8 this morning, and actually it's a modification in one of the line items. The budget and financial plan that was received prior to this morning, and I'll just kind of walk down what some of the numbers are, and when I get to the change, I'll just kind of explain why. Current year estimated for example, rental and financing income. That is that lease payment, the annual lease payment from what was Arconic, currently called Howmet. Operating revenues, other operating revenues are loan payments received in the normal course of business. And then bad debt recovery. And this is an estimation that's done each and every year, although it does seem that there may be some movement. There may be an opportunity to recoup some monies from DSC at this point in time. So it is an estimate within the last quarter of the year that we may see some funds from that. What you will notice is the non-operating revenues, which are the investment, essentially bank interest, due to some reductions in interest rates the banks are offering. There is a little bit lower figure this year than last, and budgeted for the future 22, 23, 24 is, again, it is somewhat of a budget guesstimate, but it is anticipated it will be a little bit lower than it is today. Moving down into expenditures, and the salary, this is essentially for the executive director's salary, and that is the portion which does include the sales tax or the contribution that the KLDC makes, that figure at 26.9. There is a portion that is paid by the city, but that is our portion, if you will. Professional services, and this is where the change has occurred. As you'll notice, in 2020, professional services, the cost approximately $98.70, and that was for our auditor as well as for our attorney, and that was primarily George. This year, we've brought Bob Ryan on to work with us on the project, the Kingstonian project in particular. That figure is estimated to close out the year somewhere in the $100,000 range. Year to date, September 30th, as I said, is where we're working from. We're at approximately just under $81,000 to date as of 9/30, and there are several unpaid bills at this point that will be addressed in the fourth quarter, get us to that figure. Supplies and materials, normal day-to-day working. Oops, sorry, go ahead, Hayes.
Can I just ask a question? Why, I understand why it's going to be this much higher this year on professional services. Why does it go back down to 12,000 in 2020?
Hayes, that's actually, I was just going to go down this year. That is the particular line item that we just changed, Mandy and I, in conversation this morning. And I'll do that right now. What we did, we estimated it to close out 21 at 1,000. We have changed the figure for 22 from 12,000 to a $100,000 line item, also in anticipation of a similar level of cost, if you will.
I agree.
And then at that point, depending on what happens through the city of Kingston with the KLDC for 2023-24, there has been conversation of the KLDC taking on additional properties. Obviously, there will be costs associated with that. So this time next year, when this document is presented again, I would certainly suggest that the proposed for 23 be looked at based on what conversations the mayor has in the course of next year. So that particular line item, and that document literally came out at about 5 minutes of 8 this morning. So for the adopted for next year, 2022, that line item, professional services contracts, is at $100,000. Let's see, other operating expenses. That is just a slight increase, and that is just an increase in operating costs. Obviously, you're looking at the news and seeing that costs for just about everything have increased, single digits, double digits in some cases. So that is just a hedge on some anticipated increases. On the bottom, under expenditures non-operating, in parentheses, you will see the large item at 559.6. That is including the New York State DOT payment as well as the HUD repayment. You'll see that zeroes out for next year, and that is a one-time item, one-time hit this year. So this is the format that the state requires, and those that have gone through that process with us before, this is again the format the state gives us, and it is very black and white. It does not always account for some of the real world line items, but it is the format that Mandy must upload information for. So while it appears that we're showing a huge deficit, that be aware that does include those two non-recurring payments to DOT and to HUD. The operating the P&L that I went through before does more accurately reflect where we are as of the end of September. So as I said, the document received, the only item change you will see on the new that we will be asking for a motion and approval on is the professional services contract for the year 2022 being modified from $12,000 to $100,000. Thank you.
Any other questions for BA at this point? Paul?
So we've posted $100,000 potential. And I guess this is more for you, Mayor Noble. If we continue to be involved in frivolous lawsuits, is there anything that's reculpable that we can get back?
Yeah, so I mean, what we have set up with any development agreement is that generally speaking, and we don't have, I don't believe, the revenue in the budget, but we ask for an escrow. And so at this point for the Kingstonian, I think we had put $50,000 in escrow to be able to cover legal fees. And so, you know, that again, I don't believe is reflected as revenue. We're reflecting the cost, but because it's being put in escrow and then being spent down out of that, you know, that's the way for us to recoup, is to be able to make sure that when we're doing these different development deals with, you know, with partners in the community, that, you know, we're able to pass on some of those legal expenses that are kind of outside our traditional business. Obviously, if we have litigation that's related to any of the loans that we give or those types of issues, you know, we have to eat that solely ourselves. But for these special projects, I think we have the ability to pass on those costs to the different developers.
But we don't have the ability to recover from people that you know. So we're involved in a lawsuit and then it goes to appeals. So we have to continue to defend this, right, as long as we can. So we don't have any ability to recoup, you know, or is that even possible from the people that, you know, are involving us in these lawsuits? Because it seems like we have one after another, after another, after another. They're all thrown out and we continue to pay the cost, which in essence is the taxpayers continue to pay the cost, right? I assume, you know, so we don't have any way to recoup on behalf of the taxpayers from any frivolity that's occurring.
Yeah, in many situations, you know, without again, the KLDC is not yet involved directly in any lawsuits, but for the city side, you know, we are, you know, in some certain situations, you know, the judges can award attorney fees, you know, as part of a settlement. I know that has happened when we've sued different contracting companies and other folks who have, you know, broken contracts, and, you know, we've been awarded those types of fees. It is a little bit harder in these Article 78 proceedings, which are different than kind of more traditional litigation, where these proceedings are basically based on decisions that were made by public bodies, which is different than like breaches of contracts and things like that. So there is really with the Article 78s, there isn't as much. And I think that one of the part of it is that while there is expense related to Article 78s, generally speaking, you don't need expert testimony. You don't have to have the types of depositions necessary. It's really just based on the facts presented during the decision-making process. And so it's really just a matter of, providing the courts with the documents that back up how a decision was made. So generally speaking, the litigation is less expensive for a municipality compared to litigation related to a breach of contract or a construction issue or a fall and a slip and fall, or those types of incidents where you then have to bring in kind of the testimonies and experts and witnesses and such.
I have a question. This is Glenn. Can I be heard? Am I being heard?
Yes.
With regard to recovering funds for legal funds, would it be against, in this case, where these funds are being, we're accruing these charges from somebody who's other than the developer, would we be able to have recourse against those people that have brought suit against the city? Or is it only recoverable through the developer?
Yeah, I mean, again, we'd have to probably check with our legal team on that question, but generally speaking, I don't know if there's a way for us to go after legal costs related to a frivolous Article 78 proceeding. Other types of frivolous lawsuits, a frivolous defamation lawsuit, a frivolous, breach of contract, those are, I think, where you can get attorney fees paid for by the person who, loses the suit. However, with this type of Article 78s, these kind of civil, I haven't seen a way to go about doing that, but again, I'm not a lawyer, so.
So it sounds like then we're going to be on the hook for this, for a good large chunk of the actions.
Well, currently the KLDC is not involved in any actions at this point in time. So just be clear, we're not currently being sued, haven't been sued. None of our determinations have been brought into question yet. So just.
We're not being sued, but we do have a lawyer or a legal team, and they are the ones that are billing the KLDC. So we might not be involved, but they are expensing their time, their energies, and we're getting billed. Correct?
Yeah, and again, we're right now just moving through the property transfer process. And, I do think that at some point, if there is an Article 78 that's filed, we'll have to have a discussion with our legal team about, what we would pay versus what our developer partners would pay and how that would work. But I think at this point, I don't have the answer to that, and we would have to check with our counsel on that.
I did talk to Bob Bryan a week ago, and these fees that we're having, we didn't specifically talk about the fees, but a lot of his work is with regard to replies and communications with those Article 78s. Is that not correct?
There's only been the one that he just spoke of related to the stay on the potential transfer of the property. That's the only one that, we're involved in at this point.
It's true, that's what he spoke of, but there have been others in talking with him, other actions or other communications. Okay, so I'll drop that. I think it's going to go on, and I think it's going to get serious. We've only been with him 2 or 3 months. So we're going to have to be, I think we're going to have to be prepared. It's going to go into our budget. And I don't know that we know that there's a cap. If we've got 81,000 right at this point, I think just everybody should be prepared. That's all I have to say. I just think we're going to have a handful.
Anyone have any
Well,
other
just to put-
questions on the budget?
Just, I guess, to follow up on Glenn, just to put it a little bit in perspective, it looks like as of September 30, legal expenses, legal services for the Kingstonian, invoices and bills, 61,274. So just to give you an idea where we are as of current.
And is there a reason, BA, why we don't have the escrow amount that the developers provided to us in the budget?
Unfortunately, it's not, there's not a space for Paris to upload it to Paris. And that's kind of working within the New York State framework.
But just to clarify, Steve, the escrow agreement on reimbursable costs from the developer, that $50,000 in escrow so far can be used to pay legal fees in addition to other expenses.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is I don't believe that there is a cap. 50,000 was put into escrow initially, but I think that if the closing and costs are beyond the 50, that will still be put on the developer.
And you're right. The other thing about, what's recoverable from the losing side in a lawsuit against you is completely up to a judge. Nothing we can do.
Any other questions, comments?
Just my comment. It seems like we're in the business of developing, and people fight us on development. So if they can't win, they wear us down. Doesn't seem fair, and that doesn't seem like development to me. It seems like anti-development. They're just reverse engineering how they can stop us from developing. And we're a development board. That's what we're supposed to do. So it just doesn't seem right to me. But I'm not in the political arena. I'm a business person. But our job is to develop. So if they continue to force us to answer and drive our costs up, what they're doing is they're just figuring out a way to not allow us to develop our city. It just doesn't seem right. Sorry.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, could I just make one more point? And just going back to how we kind of got involved in this in a little bit. We sought the help of legal to protect the board. Each of us, because we kind of felt that we didn't have adequate protection. So we kind of interviewed two candidates. We decided on one, and I think he's a fine choice. So I'm not going there. But what I do have a concern, and then talking with Mr. Ryan, he is spending his time on not necessarily our protection. This is the way I got it, but it's more in defending what is really the responsibility, or should have been the responsibility, of the Common Council. They have passed the buck to the KLDC, and unfortunately, we have. It seemed like some wanted this.
But we're talking about the budget right now. We can have a philosophical debate about what the role of the Kingston Local Development Corporation is. And you and I have gone round and round on that topic, but at this point, I'd like to stick to our agenda items and really just focus on the budget at hand. We do need to approve the budget. And so I'd like to kind of just keep us on the task. And if you'd like to speak at another point about the role of the KLDC versus the role of city government, we can have that conversation, and maybe I'd be happy to set up a meeting with you to have that conversation. But at this point, I would like to at least focus on trying to get this budget approved. So do you have any other questions or comments on the actual budget per se? If not, I'd ask for a motion to approve the budget as adopted, or actually as amended, I think, with that change that we talked about for 2022.
I'll move it.
Thank you. Tony, do I have a second? Lenny, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, great. So budget is done. Thank you, BA, and Mandy for your work on the budget.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Mandy in particular. She's supported me with all the material, so I appreciate it. Thank you, folks, for the approval on that item.
Great. Thank you. Mandy, do we have any old business at this point?
I don't have any, no.
I had one update that I put on the agenda to be able to just give people an update on something that, while it doesn't directly impact the KLDC, I think it's good for everyone to know. And in a few weeks, months ahead, Mandy may be reaching out to see if any of you would like to volunteer your time to participate. As part of our downtown revitalization initiative, the city of Kingston received $600,000 to be able to help support the Stockade District within the boundaries of the DRI area. Out of that $600,000, there are a couple of key components. The first one is that we wanted to be able to partner with Ulster County and Ulster County's Economic Development Office. They really, through a shared service partnership with the city, they are really our economic development arm. And there are a few key pieces of this. They're going to be taking the lead on implementing this project. There is going to be a residential renovation component where we'll be able to provide resources to people who that live in the Stockade District that have struggled to be able to keep their house up, that may need some residential improvements. And so that's about $250,000. There's also a facade improvement grant to be able to make grants to those businesses and commercial buildings in the Stockade District that have really struggled to be able to kind of keep their facades up. And that's about $227,000. Something that I think is more interest directly to the KLDC is that there's actually $60,000 in micro enterprise grants to small local businesses in the Stockade District. And there's about $5,000 per grant that will be given out. And so as part of the county's outreach to us, they would like at some point, because they know how we have done micro enterprise lending, and previously we used to do grants, that they may be interested in having a board member or two be willing to volunteer to be a part of their kind of review team as applications come into the county. And so I just wanted to mention that. So if you see an email come across from me or Mandy, asking for volunteers, that's what that's about. They're not trying to replicate or duplicate our services. They already know that we have a great small lending program that many people have taken advantage of. But this is an opportunity, I think, for us to be able to kind of package both the residential renovations, the facade improvements, as well as these small micro enterprise grants, kind of out all as one package that the county is going to be able to manage, maintain, and with our assistance market, and then administer, which is really good because our office is small and they've got a lot more resources available to be able to kind of get the word out. And so the goal is to be able to get about 9 residential units rehabilitated, to get about 11 facades done, and to give about 12 of the micro grants out. And the Stockade Business District is generally a little bit bigger than maybe what we, it's hard to tell depending on how you define uptown, but basically it goes from St. James Street, all the way to kind of Dietz Stadium, and then kind of over to Washington Avenue and Trunk Drive, and kind of over to, the Main Street area, Green Street. And so it kind of is a little bit more than just like Wall Street and North Front Street. And so there's definitely some multifamily houses on, that we're looking at in particular, like on St. James, and others that really could use some facade or the residential improvements. And then obviously we know that there's some buildings in uptown that could really use a little facade assistance. And so that's the thoughts here. And I just wanted to kind of give everyone an update as we do plan on rolling this out to the public very, very soon. And so we wanted to just kind of give you kind of a heads up to this program. And Mandy, did I cover everything? I know you've been kind of somewhat involved in some of the emails back and forth.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, great. So that was my update for today. And I think we still have to approve our meeting virtual minutes from August 3rd. So do I have a motion on that? Andy, and then a second with Paul.
Mine was a question, but.
Oh, yours was a question. Oh, go ahead, Andy.
But not,
Sorry.
but if you, we can finish this and then I'll bring it up. We
Oh,
can
sure.
finish it.
Yes. So we'll
And
do the
I'll move
minutes.
it. And
All
I'll
right.
move it.
Andy and then Paul is second. All in favor on approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Andy, go ahead. Your question.
I just had a question, Steve, because it seems like months that we've talked about the business park and marketing the business park. Is there any movement at all with finding any interest in developing our business in the business park?
Yeah, Mandy, do you want to give everyone just kind of a quick update on where we are? Maybe we could just mention that, you know, there was one of our tenants reached out about potentially expansion. We don't have a formal proposal from them yet, but there was an interest in expanding.
Would that be expanding on their parcel already or on
Yeah.
the parcels that we're trying to develop? The
Yeah,
one that
Mandy,
we've
how
already
would
got.
you characterize that, do you think?
Both. They wanted to expand on the parcel that they already have. And then they were looking into acquiring additional parcels. They're still in the, I'm going to say, investigating phase to decide what works best for them. And they haven't come back.
Mandy, and in terms of other interests, have you gotten, I know for a while we were kind of getting a lot of cold calls from folks that were kind of interested in checking out the business park. Have you, has that kind of slowed down? Has that picked up? Has it been kind of pretty consistent?
It's pretty much the same. The biggest issue that people have is they want it right now. And with the business park being over top of the cave and the bats, you know, we can't just,
I know it well.
you know, any time of the year. And we've, you know, they have interest, but they haven't completely ruled us out either. They can't really find, you know, other places. They want to be in Kingston. So, you know, hopefully we can entice them, I guess. But yeah, I mean, we haven't had an abundance, but it hasn't necessarily petered off either.
Yeah, and I mean, I think our hope though, Andy, I think to get more to your point is that, you know, we're trying to develop also a better, you know, relationship with the county so that we, as a business park, are more a part of their economic development, you know, lens. Because I know obviously a lot of resources are being put into Tech City and trying to reimagine that. But I do think that we've always kind of not been thought of, I think, as a major location or site to redevelop. And I think that we're trying to put this park more in their forefront of, you know, that it is relatively shovel ready and it does have, you know, space for some relatively good sized buildings, you know, 40 to 50,000 feet. Yeah, Hayes.
Just a question for Mandy. These cold calls are getting, can you characterize typically what are they looking for in terms of square footage? And are they looking to build their own, or do they want to, when you say, you know, up and ready, they want us to own it and they lease it? What's sort of the profile?
So a lot of them are looking for much more square footage than what we can provide.
So over 15,000 square feet, over 20?
Oh, they're looking like anywhere from 30 to 50 or more. And that's just their building. So I'm not really sure what they would need for parking. You know, we'd have to figure that out. And then because the business park does have some restrictions where you can't build higher than 28 feet, you know, they have to figure out how they would be able to configure their buildings where they wouldn't be higher than 28 feet.
Has that preliminary estimate on that one pad building we sort of sketched out, is anyone specifically interested in that? I think that was 20,000 square feet.
Yeah, that was specifically for that, that business. And then the tennis courts that were spoken about at one of the other meetings, he was looking for a building that would be 2 stories high. And he needed quite a bit of space, but they've moved or they're gearing towards going to, I think it's Xena. Xena was able to give them something that they wanted or needed. So that's the avenue that they were taking right now. A lot of other businesses are either coming up out of New York and they're looking for places, or there are some businesses around here that are looking for expansion, but they're looking to expand much bigger than what our pad can hold.
Gotcha.
What's the maximum size that pad can hold again? 20,000?
I think Dennis was able to get it up to 20, but it couldn't go much more than that because of the, you know, the acreage on to the left of it. And then there's areas that can't be built on because they're protected areas.
Right.
Or they're too steep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because as you know, year after year as it goes by, it just still sits there when it, you know, could bring in something. And should we even think about, you know, long term, maybe putting something there so it is there? And I'm just trying to think. It seems like we're such a hot area right now, and people coming up looking for places to manufacture or put smaller businesses, even a hub. That's all.
Yeah, I
Any
do agree,
updates?
Andy. I think if we had an empty warehouse that was 20,000 square feet with 3 loading doors, I think that we would not have a problem getting someone to want to move into that space. It's just, it's a one of those chicken and the egg things, you know. Do we make the commitment to actually, you know, build the thing in hopes of finding someone to use it, or do we wait until we find someone that, you know, wants to build to suit? And it's a little harder sell.
Oh yeah, I
A
know.
little bit of a
Waiting for the prices to come down is a sort of thing.
I do think
Construction
there's a little bit of a middle ground where you put the pad in and stub it out with the utilities and then let somebody configure the actual building the way they want. So you build the maximum pad and then let them finish it. That at least saves you some time on the construction.
That saves you close to 6 to 8 months, let alone, you know, because you still got to get your SWIPs and everything else in there. I mean, that stuff takes forever. Took me a year to get my SWIP.
I think it'd be interesting for us to explore the cost of just pouring the pad with utility connections and see what that would cost for us to undertake it.
Because you could throw a metal building up within, you know, a couple of months. So if that was ready, somebody really could come in and within 6 months be fully operational. And it would cost us a lot less at the forefront.
So maybe what we could do is we could ask Mandy to at least get some price quotes on what it would cost to have a design and, you know, done for that. And, you know, and see if we could hire a local engineering firm or something that could, you know, spec that all out and come back to the board with, you know, this is what it would cost to be able to actually pour that pad. This is the exact size. We've done some of that homework already, but, you know, that could be a good, you know, discussion point for us at, you know, our next meeting.
I think so.
Yeah, I think we should really keep moving forward with that. It just looms there year after year. Okay, thanks.
So can I ask a question as a newbie to this group? So economic development is within the charge of this
this group? Or I thought mostly it was just loan type of management or, giving opinions on loans and the like. But so economic development is within the purview of this group, Mayor?
Yep, that's what we're here for. And that's,
Well,
that's
yeah, no,
really-
I get that, but I didn't know it was, knocking on doors and trying to make things happen. I thought it was more on the receiving side if there is, but if it's on the more on the proactive side, then that makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah, no, that's
Especially since-
when we took the business, when we developed the business park, I mean, that was a complete,
From this,
from this board,
From this board, you did great.
we,
Okay.
the city of Kingston created the KLDC for the express purpose of building the business park, operating the business park, attracting tenants, providing loans and support services. And it's we've been trying to, we've done a lot of loan work over the years, but we
Right.
really struggled with the other
main
parts of
charge.
our.
interesting. Does the city have a paid economic development position or not?
No, and that's been we used to a long time ago.
Right.
Steve
what I
Finkel,
thought.
who was here. And after that, we really have not had one. Mandy kind of took on some of that role, and we realized that, partnering with the county with their staff of 3 or 4 folks just made a whole lot more sense. And so now,
Okay.
Mandy communicates with them very frequently, and we have a good partnership now.
All right. So that's good. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So that's all I had on the agenda today. Mandy, did I get everything?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So with that, I think I'll ask for a motion to adjourn and thank everyone for their attendance today.
So moved.
All right. Thank you, Hayes. Do I have a second?
Second.
BA. All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time. And we'll talk to you soon.
Do we know next meeting date or not at this point?
Yeah, we're usually the third Thursday of the month, which is going to be right around Thanksgiving. So we may end up rescheduling, and we'll probably just have one between now and December. We'll probably just have a December-ish meeting.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Have a good day, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.